Who Dey to all those who celebrate. We are back at it again. Another episode of Gridiron Jungle with your two favorite Bengals fans. I'm Rich, not alone, of course, here with my brother Philly. Phil, what's happening with you, Phil? What's going
Yes,
on, brother?
sir. Who day, who day, who day, been a good week, and I'm ready to talk about this draft class, man. I'm looking forward to these next few episodes I think we got something good lined up for them, man. I'm really excited about this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to make sure, well, we've been trying to schedule this recording, and schedules have just been kind of crazy, but it also intentionally we didn't want to do it right away just to kind of give ourselves, we live in an instant reaction culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's good to just kind of sit back and kind of let some thoughts and let the feelings uh, come with you over time. And I feel a little bit different than what I did on draft night. And we'll talk about it throughout this episode. But we appreciate all y'all for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Please be sure to subscribe, comment, share. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like the videos. Just helps us with the algorithm, everything like that. We appreciate everybody taking their time to check us out as we gear up for season 2 of Gridiron Jungle. Phil had just teased it a little bit. We got a few episodes coming up that we're really excited about. So just to, the season's pretty much kicking up. I know it's May, but we'll sleep and we'll wake up and then season will be here.
Facts.
So just to give you a little bit of a heads up of what's going to be going on, and we'll remind you again at the end of this episode, draft recap, as you're going to be listening to now, this upcoming week, schedule release,
Mm-hmm.
Christmas in May. One of the best
Absolutely.
things, Phil always says, hey, I can play in the second part of my year now that I got the schedule. Me not being in Cincinnati anymore is a big deal for me too, just to kind of see where we're traveling. I think the
Mm-hmm.
day before the release, which is on the 14th, I think the day before they actually find out if they're going to Spain
Yeah,
for the
that
Dolphins, which
Yeah, on the 13th, they're announcing a full international slate. So I like the way they're doing it this year, man. They gave us a date early. Like
yeah,
before, we would have to guess, like, when did they release it last year? So
yeah,
I'm really excited. They're really finally like leaning into it. So
yeah, it makes sense. I don't know why people love the schedule release, so I don't know why they didn't. NFL is pretty good at
mhm.
making a moment out of these things. So it took them long enough, but I'm glad it's here. We were in Vegas at the draft, watching the first round, and we looked like, hold on, are they about to give us a date of when they announcing the schedule? What?
Yeah.
Um, what was I just about to say about the overall? Well, oh, the whole Miami thing, man. It's a gift and a curse
Mhm.
because international game. I've never been to one. The Bengals have played in London before
Mhm.
during the Andy Dalton era. I would try to go to Spain,
Yeah.
depending on when it is. I would definitely try to go to Spain, man. Give me some Spanish Reds. Talk about the wine.
For sure.
Um, but also, I wouldn't mind going to Miami. I know Phil has never been to Miami, so
Never been.
that'd be a dope time. I love Miami. At one point, it was my favorite city in my 20s. Not so
Mhm.
much now, but either way, we'll see what happens. I just can't wait for the schedule release, see when we see what happens, and we'll have a special episode just kind of discussing that, breaking down the schedule, breaking down maybe some of our, because we know the opponents, but when they're going to be played, maybe some of our toughest stretches as far as fans. Obviously, we want to talk about the beginning of the schedule, given that the Zach Taylor era, notorious for starting 0-2, 0-3, whatever the case may be. So we'll talk about all of that. And then we're also going to start a series, pretty much like a top 10. We're not going to call it that, but we have different categories for each position, including head coaches. And we'll start dropping those weekly to align with the start of training camp. And then we'll go full speed. You should be getting at least one episode a week during training camp. And when the season comes, you should be looking at 2 episodes. One is a recap or a preview episode, and the other a recap. So 2 episodes a week. So just so everybody knows, but bear with us. It's still summertime, still off season. We'll give you some content. It might not be weekly yet, but it will be coming very soon. So looking forward to getting into all that. But for right now, Phil, we need to talk about this 2025 NFL drafts. The Bengals had 6 draft picks. First and foremost, before we get into them, you know what? I guess we can go ahead and just name our draft picks right now. We have first round pick, with pick 17, we have Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, edge rusher.
The
Second pick,
menace.
the menace, man, genetic freak. With our round 2 pick, 49, we took linebacker Demetrius Knight out of South Carolina. Third pick, maybe my favorite pick of ours for this draft, Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia, pick 81 in round 3. He's a guard. Played with Mims at Georgia. Nicknamed Pickle. I don't know why his nickname is Pickle. He said as Mims.
Deal, like sometimes people named Dylan go by Deal for short. So
yeah. All right, look at you putting that together. Mr. Dad Joke himself. Mr. Dad
exactly.
Joke himself, any problem, get that together.
Man? It's a special talent.
For sure. We got round 4, pick 119. We took another linebacker, Barrett Carter out of Clemson. Round 5, pick 133, tackle Jalen Rivers out of Miami, Miami University in Florida, not Ohio. And then also our last pick was round 6, 193. Took running back Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech, which is another sneaky sleeper pick from me. Phil.
Yes, sir.
I know you wanted us to trade back, maybe get some more picks. We did not do that. What was your overall thoughts on our drafts? Maybe at the time and now that we have had a couple weeks to think about it, how do you feel now?
Yeah, so as anybody that follows the draft probably knows, Shamar Stewart was one of the more polarizing prospects. I saw him graded as high as top 5, and I've seen him as low as maybe high 20s as far as where he was projected to go. So he's the definition of that boomer bust type of first round prospect, in my opinion. And you mentioned kind of feeling different than you did in a moment. I was terrified of the Bengals taking Shamar Stewart. And I think you mentioned it during our conversations between now and then, how that was the person I specifically named that I didn't want us to take. And it was because of that, even though, you see the combine stuff and people want to compare him to Myles Garrett, the only thing that I could see and feel was that Myles Murphy PTSD. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like Myles Murphy killed the combine. He was great athlete, you know what I mean? And he even had production, he kind of had both things. So that's what really scared me about Shamar Stewart. But I'll be honest, when I was watching my film and when I watched Shamar Stewart, I didn't spend a lot of time on him. But once we took him, I watched more highlights and more film. And I mean, the name Menace fits. I mean, he is kind of one-dimensional right now. Even though he is freakishly fast, he really relies on his power. But Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks relying on his power. So you do know what type of success a player with his tools can have. A lot of people commonly talk about Danielle Hunter, however you want to pronounce his name, and how his lack of production, that he had in college. And you look at him now and he's double-digit sacks each and every year, getting paid, I think, twice as much as Trey Hendrickson for whatever reason. But I definitely understand why the Bengals made this pick. He checks all the boxes that they look for in this position. And, after watching his interviews, even if he is a bust, I like Shamar Stewart. He's funny. He's personable. Yeah. He seems like he's going to be a great fit in the locker room. I can't wait to see him playing next to BJ Hill, like those two being as silly as they are and then turning into the type of, players that they are on the field. I'm really excited to see how he fits in this line. And he's got the right mindset. He says, I'm going to be right up under Trey Hendrickson. We're going to be best friends, so I like that attitude. So he's got the right mindset. And, I think he's going to be a good fit. And hopefully, he is, as productive as, the Bengals expect him to be.
What would you give the Bengals if you had to give a letter grade to the draft?
If I had to give a letter grade, I'd probably say C+, maybe B- at the absolute best if I'm being friendly. But I would say it's probably a C+, maybe C. Even though I do think we got better, I still equally think that we had probably arguably the worst draft in the league. And reason being is because I feel like we took every player, with the exception of Shamar Stewart, uh, earlier than anticipated. You know, I love Demetrius Knight, one of my favorite linebackers in this draft class, but I didn't have him slated as a second round pick. You know, the next linebacker after him, I don't think went for like a round and a half, maybe a full round. So that I just had a little beef there. Same with Fairchild. Love Fairchild. Really was one of those guys that I wanted. I just didn't see him going in the third round. I saw him going maybe fourth, fifth round. And maybe he'll play up to what he was expected to, what the Bengals took him at that third round value. I do expect him to get every chance to start. So he's going to have the opportunity to earn that draft value that they used on him. And Barrett Carter, who was probably my favorite pick. I know you mentioned Fairchild is your favorite pick. Barrett Carter's probably my favorite pick, and I think he's got the ability to be even better than Demetrius Knight, which is why I have a little bit of beef with the Demetrius Knight pick, because I think the linebacker you got in the fourth round could potentially be better than the one you got in the second round. And I honestly thought like Barrett Carter 2 years ago at Clemson when Venables was still there, I thought Barrett Carter was going to be a first round pick, like bona fide. So he didn't, end up becoming what I thought he was, and maybe that's a good thing for us. Maybe Al Golden can pull that out of him, and we have Logan Wilson's replacement. You know what I mean? I think that's what his ceiling is. So I'm really excited about that pick. Jalen Rivers, hopefully he gets a chance to start. He's got great versatility, plays tackle, plays guard, all on the left side. I think he'll probably get some looks on the right side, maybe. And then, you mentioned Taj Brooks. I mean, productive back, big, heavy back, maybe I think 230, 225. Very
Not the tallest,
productive.
but yeah.
I don't think I ever saw one play where one person brought him to the ground by himself. And really solid back. I think at any other go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say third in FBS in missed tackles.
Yeah. So
forced 154 missed tackles.
That's what you want right there from the running back position. And that, every little yard counts, so making that many people miss, getting that extra yardage is so huge. That's those third down conversions. That's turning that third and long to third and short. So definitely what you want to see from, a RB2. So I really like that pick. In any other class, I mean, this class, we talked about it leading up to the draft, how heavy it was in that running back position. And I think he's probably a fourth round pick in any other, normal draft year. So really good value there, I think. So.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. If I had to give a letter grade, it'd probably be around that C plus range.
For sure.
NFL.com rated us the second worst draft.
Okay. Yeah,
right
I'm
behind,
in line with
right
that.
in front of the Vikings. The Vikings had the worst, mainly because they only had 5 picks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's to your point, and you said this in real time. This is what happens when you aren't active in free agency to take care of some of those needs, because now you're in a position where you have to draft off need versus I'm always going to be a best player available type of person. If you have the luxury to do so, that would have been nice. But obviously we weren't in the position to do that. And listen, I yelled out an expletive at the draft in real time as we watched the selection, because nothing against Shamar Stewart. It was the other players on the board left that we could have used as well. That was the biggest thing that I was looking at. I'm cool with the Zabel. Like Zabel went right after. Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He's a guard. I'm cool with that, given that we got Dylan. I really think Dylan's going to be really good. I think he's going to be a steal at the third round, because there's a lot of people say, yeah, we can look at it as, he could have been there in the fourth round, but all of these picks you got to treat like the first pick, like because you're not gonna. Some people you're not gonna get a chance at again, and if that's the guy that you wanted to get based off need, I get it. I don't have a list of whatever other guards were available at the time he was selected, and I'm sure it was dwindling down, and the Bengals didn't want to run that chance. However, we do have, I don't know, James Pierce, who doesn't love football, from what I'm
Yeah.
understanding. So I never
Yeah.
want somebody on my team like that. We just saw the Panthers cut Clowney.
Yep.
Another similar person like that. Just all the talent in the world, just doesn't love it. Just doesn't want to be the best they can be. Malachi Starks really hurt, especially going to the Ravens. We could have
Mm-hmm.
used him. Now, do we need him more than an edge? No, I don't think so. Also, a couple corners. Jahad Campbell was probably the biggest thing that
Man.
I was upset about because he was right there and he fell to the Eagles again. However, once again, you just touched on our linebackers, especially Barrett. I'm not mad at that, getting him in the
Mm-hmm.
fourth round and making sure we can make something shake. 2-3 years from now, we'll see how all this plays out. This is all projection and this is all talk. This could easily be an A draft class when we look at it a couple years. It
Yep.
could be an F. We don't know.
Yep.
We don't know. And that's kind of why we're right in the middle with C plus, because it is a bag of tricks. It can go one way and go the other. We can look back at this as this might be the class that, I don't want to say ruin the Bengals, but man, you could wish you had a get back. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we did get some good, valuable players at their positions, and I think that they're going to really acclimate to the locker room very well.
Yeah.
It feels good, and we'll talk about this more once we get into training camp stuff, but it is going to feel good not having to worry about contracts when it comes to Jamar and T. Just having that linger over your head, even with Joe before they got the Joe deal done, like our stars are always like, we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done. Now it feels like it's just football.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that can lead to a better start.
Yep.
But I'm with you on Stewart. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say outside of the Trey Hendrickson situation, you're 100% correct.
Yeah, but we all that kind of is what it is. We all know what's going on, what we want to happen, what might happen, who knows. But I was gonna say the Stewart thing, I was upset, but after hearing him more, I was like, all right, then he has the right mentality. He's saying the right things.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can come in here. He can come in and make an impact. And similar to what you said, if Miles Murphy wasn't taken a couple years ago, I don't think I'd have the same feelings as Stewart. But it is more so one of those, all right, man, we're going to take another risk at one of these guys who's an athletic freak and see if they can pan out to something. And maybe Murphy still can. I think this is the year. If he doesn't do it this year, then it is what it is. But yeah, we should have a big upgrade on our D-line. We should.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
Barrett, his range and the way he can cover and get from sideline to sideline, I think that's going to be perfect for Al Golden's offense. I know Demetrius Knight he's a little bit older. I think he's like 25.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
They called him he's married with 2 kids. He is a grown man. Like,
yeah, which is good for us. Maybe not for him, because that's like a rookie contract and maybe one more deal after that.
If
That's it.
You know?
Yeah, because you're gonna be 29 like by the time that rookie contract's up. And you know, people losing the step, and obviously Jermaine Pratt replacement. We know Jermaine Pratt is all but gone here with Cincinnati. So you know, building for the future, going defense heavy. We didn't really need skill positions. Yes, there were some people there. Buka was there, a wide receiver when we picked. Like, it just would have been malpractice to pick another receiver at that point. It just would have been as cool as it is. We needed to shore up that D line, and we did that. And we got better in the second level with the linebackers. And I do think we have enough, especially with Dax coming back. I think Battle's going to have a really, really big year.
I hope so. We need it.
Yeah, I really think that's going to happen. Geno Stone is playing for free. So at this point, I think we have enough on our back end to really shore up everything. And I think the mindset, without having spoken to anybody, of course, of the Bengals organization is, listen, if we can be decent on defense, we can be decent and cause a few turnovers, our offense will take care of the rest. And I think our offense is going to be locked in. Not the ideal way that you want to win games and kind of go on a path to a Super Bowl. It's a long season. You figure it out in real time. Rotate those fresh bodies, and we'll see what happens. So I'm not mad at our drafts. I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic. But as always, we got to see what happens on the field.
For sure.
Taj Brooks, I didn't talk about. Let's just talk about real quick. We kind of gave our thoughts on Stewart and what we think about that. What we think about him.
I was gonna say while you're on Stewart and before we shift to the later rounds, I just want you talked about shouting those explicitives when when Shamar Stewart was taken. I don't want to not mention the explicitives that were shouted back to back because my draft darling, my dream target went the pick right before us. That was the one
Oh, I don't know how we
that
missed that. Yes.
Walter Nolan going to Arizona. Like when Booker went 12 to the Cowboys, I was geeked. I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely gonna get to us. Then Grant went, then Warren was still there, and then Atlanta took Walker, and I just thought it was sizing up perfect. I thought Arizona was gonna take an edge. I didn't expect them to go with the interior defensive lineman with Nolan, and that was the one that like really like changed my mood and made me want to trade down. So, you know, I know Houston wanted to trade up for Igbuka. They wanted to get up in front of Tampa to get Igbuka. So, but they didn't have a first round pick. So I don't necessarily think the Bengals would have been interested in moving completely out of the first round. But it would have been interesting, if they would have moved back to say like 23 with the Packers, so the Packers could have had a stab at Igbuka if they wanted him over Golden. I don't know, but that's something that I think would have been interesting and maybe changed the way that the draft went for us the rest of the way. But I think they addressed the need. Can't be mad at that pick there. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'm upset all over again.
but I just
Um,
wanted to touch on that before we
yeah, no, that
continue
was
there.
frustrating. It's one thing when it happens at pick 11, 12, 13,
Hmm. Hmm.
right before it's insane. And like you said, our whole draft looks different.
Yeah, really
We are able to get
surprised.
Nolan there.
Really surprised that way they passed on Xavier Watts as well. Like that more so surprised me than Demetrius Knight being the pick himself was the fact that they didn't take Watts and that or really address that safety room at all. So I hope you're right about having enough on the back end and Battle having a big year because I think our safety room is pretty bad. Like I think it's definitely the worst in the division, and yeah. I think you're pointing a lot of fingers at Lou when you look at what we did to address that room, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out.
Absolutely, man. Look, we talked about Stewart. Let's talk about some of these other picks.
Hmm.
Demetrius Knight Jr. Um,
Dark Knight, the
he was
Hunter.
on a very
I'm
he was
excited.
on a very he was a very good defense. He was on a very good defense,
Hmm.
arguably the best player on that defense.
Hmm.
Golden has already talked about, hey, if we need to go 5-man front, we can put him on the
Yeah,
edge if necessary.
yeah.
Zach has already came in and said we expect him to be a guy that comes in and plays right away.
Hmm.
We talked about his age. He is older, but he is
Hmm.
one of those passionate, fiery linebackers, almost like an old school linebacker that you want on your
Oh
squad.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So that I'm excited about. I don't know how he's going to pair up, and that's what's going to be the big thing. Are you putting him next to Logan? What are you doing with Barrett? Like, how is that going to look? Um,
Hmm.
what's John Meta's development? What's his development been
Hmm.
since last season?
Hmm.
Um, because he was a preseason darling.
Hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. That's going to be one of the battles that I look at in training camp. See how quickly everybody
Yeah.
picks things up. But I do
Hmm.
think that Demetrius Knight can make an impact. I just don't know how it's going to shake out between him and Barrett.
Yeah.
Because we know Wilson's going to be
I, I
manning that.
I
Go
personally
ahead.
think Demetrius Knight is going to be a day one starter. I think he replaces Pratt. I think as much as I like, Muma John Meta, and it was a cool story last year, I think he's going to fill that Joe Bocci role. I think he's going to be like a leader on special teams. He's going to be a backup linebacker, the same as he was last year. What is going to be interesting to see how they use that front. Are you going to see us running some, essentially like 5-2 looks where you're bringing a linebacker down there on the edge and you've got Shamar in there as well, and Trey and Murphy, or maybe you kick Osai inside. When you put that NASCAR package together, it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. But I do think, Demetrius Knight is probably going to end up being a starter just because he's a second round pick. But I do expect Carter to play a lot. I think he's truly going to be Logan Wilson's backup. He's got experience with the green dot, calling plays. He's a smart guy. He's a leader. Team captain. So same with Demetrius Knight, and he was there. He was at South Carolina for I think 1 year, and he was a team captain. So that says a lot about both of those guys. So I think it's really interesting that we've got like such leadership experience or such great leadership qualities at every linebacker spot now, regardless of who you're rolling out there, whether it's Knight, whether it's Logan, whether it's Barrett Carter. Those are all leaders. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out, because the year we made it to the Super Bowl, the linebackers were really the strength of our defense. So I am excited about that aspect of it. But I do truly believe you could have got Demetrius Knight much later than what you got him. The Bengals talked about they were holding their breath, hoping that he would be there. And I just never got the feeling that there was ever a threat of him not being there. The next linebacker didn't go until the 11th pick in the third round, and that was Nick Martin from Oklahoma State. So, there were you got Barrett Carter in the fourth round, and Nick Martin was the only linebacker that went in that third round. So again, they had him much higher than everyone else did for whatever the reason was. But I don't dislike the pick. I just think it was a little too rich for me.
Yeah, I can understand that, and that's the one you brought up a good point. We have to remember this is going to be a new system.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we know Al's been here before, but he's going to be running the show. We'll see exactly what he has planned. I don't want any, and that's the thing I'm looking at. The one thing I will say about Demetrius Knight is not the best in coverage, especially if you play a man. I don't know if you can put him on the field that often, especially if there's a good running back or tight end. If you're playing man, because we could be looking at some Mike Hilton scenarios. All respect to Mike Hilton, one of my favorite Bengals, incredible player for us. However, when he got that, when other teams look for that matchup with him on the slot.
Oh yeah.
And I think they're going to be doing the same with Knight if he is in man coverage. So, and that's where Carter comes in, and kind of can relieve some of that because he is much quicker, faster, can cover better, in my opinion. Yeah. And we got some guys with some accolades too. I think Knight was third team All-American. Card was second team All-American, or it might be, I might have those flip-flops, all conference guys.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
If we being honest, I think Barrett Carter can defend the slot. He can defend tight end. He can rush. Barrett Carter can. He really I hope he's what you expect him to be, or can get out with you. Because like Isaiah Simmons, for example, that kind of flamed out that last super versatile.
I thought, man, you couldn't have told me Isaiah Simmons wasn't about to be the new prototypical linebacker.
That's who Barrett Carter reminds me of. He literally can do everything. Now he's not the size that Simmons is, but he's got those same type of traits and those same type of tools like that. He really can do everything. He's a 4-down linebacker. Like he even was on special teams as the best player on their defense. So it just tells you what type of player and person he is and what type of leader he is. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to the linebackers and what they bring. Moving on, we'll talk about our third-round pick, Dylan Fairchild, and our fifth-round pick, Jalen Rivers, since they're both offensive linemen. I know you said we might have, pick 81 might have been a little early for him. My thing with Fairchild is if you put him with other good offensive linemen or in between a good center and tackle, I think he's really good. It takes the ceiling all the way up there. Now that could be said for anybody, of course, but I think him particularly, he's a weight room freak. Like he's one of those workout warriors. Put up crazy numbers. I'm not sure if it's combine numbers, but I have heard the stories and legend of him in the weight room at Georgia. I think when you put him in between Karras and whether it be Brown or Mims, I think he's going to be very good. He does have some weaknesses. He does have some things that he needs to work on. Let's see. How tall is this?
He's
Is he 6'5"?
yeah, 6'5".
Okay, then yeah. So I like that. He was second team All American, second team All SEC. We know Georgia and the pedigree of guys that they kind of put out. He didn't. I know he was suffering from a calf strain, so we didn't get a ton of workout stuff from him during the off season. We'll see how that goes. I think he played He started 2 years at Georgia. I'm excited about him. I really am. I think getting him because we needed a guard. That's one of the things we've been talking about. I think that's partially why I'm excited. Getting him in the third round.
Yep.
I think was a perfect find for what we needed, and I think he can come in day one and start and really be impactful. I mean, we're going to need it, especially when we talk about the Browns getting Mason Graham and all the interior linemen that we're going to face this year. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I'm with it. And then you got Jalen Rivers, who's from Florida, went to Miami down there. Honorable mention all ACC. Maybe because the junior year, 2023, let's put it like that. He second team All ACC, and then he missed 5 games last year. And he played 7 at left tackle, 1 at left guard, so he is a little bit versatile when it comes to all of those things. Big guy, big frame, about 6'6", 319. What do you see happening with him? Because our tackle positions are pretty much filled. Do you see him being that swing lineman? Can he obviously I mentioned he played 1 game at left guard, started 1 game.
Yeah.
You see him moving over to a guard? Can you see him taking one of those guard spots and starting day one?
I do see him projecting as a guard in the NFL. The Bengals allegedly told him he was going to compete at guard. I think ideally he becomes your swing tackle, your Cody Ford replacement, and is essentially your 6th man as far as the offensive line goes. Because during the Senior Bowl, they even had him taking snaps at center. Like he played all 5 spots during the Senior Bowl. You mentioned his flexibility playing games at left tackle and left guard. He actually had multiple games where he played both left tackle and left guard within the same game. Like that was a thing that they did. So for him to have the success that he had without ever really being able to get in a rhythm, I think is incredible. So for him, if they can have a plan, like I don't know if they're going to leave him on the left side. All of his experiences on the left side, all 5 years in college, his experiences on the left side. But they mentioned Fairchild's going to be in the mix for left guard. Volson is still on the roster and is getting paid almost $4 million. All his experiences at left guard. Cody Ford had I won't say success, but his best play at left guard. So, somebody's got to compete on the right side. Are they going to flip Rivers over there to compete with Lucas Patrick, or or is Matt Lee going to be in that right guard mix? Like, I just want to know what are they planning there? Are you still planning on signing a Dalton Reisner or a Brandon Scherf because you got Geno Stone to take a pay cut? Or are you gonna cut Cordell Volson because paying him almost $4 million? How is he not the starting left guard? I really don't know. But what I will say, and I think it's interesting, they've already given Scott Peters more talent to work with on the offensive line from a draft standpoint than they ever did for Frank Pollock, which I think is both wrong and right, because finally they're actually addressing that. So excited to see they actually invested some draft capital and some solid guys there. So if both of them become starters, if one of them wins the left guard spot and one wins the right guard spot, then maybe this class does become an A, like you said, So
Yeah.
if you can get if Knight and Carter both play starter snaps and Shamar playing starter snaps, and both of these guys are, one a starter, one a swing tackle, hey, could be an A class.
Yeah, I see Rivers starting out as a swing tackle and then figuring it out. I think he's a depth piece, but that's what you put the pads on for. That's what training camp's for. That's what preseason's for. we'll figure out how he does and what he contributes and where things start in September. Um, Lastly, our last pick of the draft, Taj Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
The running back class, we've talked about this, is just so deep that he's really not a 6th-round pick. It just so happened that there's a lot of good running backs. I think he would have been taken a lot of earlier in previous years. He's a stud. The only thing that I'm questioning right now is where does he fall? We have 4 running backs right now between Chase Brown, who we all obviously know is RB1. You and I spoke. It feels like every single week that Chase needs somebody else to carry the load with him. And then he went on to have one of the best seasons. And we still felt that way, even though he did produce the way he did. He needed kind of this bell count. We thought Moss was going to be that. Moss started the season as a starter last year. Obviously went down with an injury. I don't feel the most confident about Moss. I don't think Moss should be getting carries over Brooks. I don't think P-Ron should be getting carries over Brooks. Now, Brooks isn't a burner. Like, he's not going to be rushing out. He's not going to be giving you 80-yard touchdowns. He will get tracked down. I will say that.
Yeah.
But as we said earlier, he will make you miss as far as you can't tackle him. He is just one of those guys. He's 5'9", so he's not the biggest, but he is like wide. 230. He is somebody who is going to be the perfect thunder to Brown's lightning. Change of pace back. Not change of pace back, excuse me, but just a power back in that sense, which you wouldn't expect. And I think he can make people miss. It's just not going to be in a, for lack of a better term, sexy way.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about him in our running back room. And I think him and Brown can be a nice tandem for the years to come.
Yeah.
Especially with how running backs are. Well, the market has changed a little bit, but I really like that combination. I just don't want them to play around with I don't like when I'm a North Carolina Tar Heels fan, right? Basketball, when it comes to basketball. Now, not that nonsense that's going on with the football program. But the basketball team is one of my favorite teams. And Roy Williams used to do this thing that drove me crazy where he would play people off seniority. And I get it. That's kind of how things used to be. But I look at our 2020 class, the class with Caleb Love, RJ Davis. I also had Walker Kessler, who's in the league, Dayron Sharp, who's in the league. You got these guys who you know are better than your Garrison Brooks. And even Baycott at that point. I play these guys. And what happens? They end up transferring. Well, Dayron Sharp was one and done, and Kessler ended up transferring and winning Defensive Player of the Year for the SEC when he went to Auburn. Like, these guys have talent. You can't just sit them in the only reason of being because you're a freshman. Nah, if you're good, play them. And I hope it's the same way with Brooks and the rest of these rookies, especially the O-line, because, I think we have 3 spots that are filled. Karras, Brown, Mims. Everything else up for grab. Whoever wants it, go get it. And I think that's what it should be. The linebacker situation, that might be my most intriguing. That in the secondary. I want to see where things shake out with the secondary and how things go. Cam Taylor-Britt, you going to play corner. Is Dax playing corner this year? Is he playing safety? We're going to keep him at corner so Battle can play safety along with Geno. Like, what's going to go on with Fig? Is Fig playing slot corner? Is he going to be like that third corner, like that's backing up Cam and Dax? Like, is there going to be any kind of special position? Are we going to have a star role? I don't know. I just don't know. So I think the back end of our defense, the front end is going to work itself out. Like, I don't, obviously the trade is going to be the biggest thing that we're asking about, but that's going to be the biggest thing that I have. But I say all that to say, those 6 picks, we'll see what happens. Right now, I'm in the middle. It can go one way, it can go the other. And
absolutely,
that's why you love the sport. That's why you play the game. So I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at the draft, and I feel a lot better. If we did this the Monday after the draft ended, then it wouldn't be as positive.
That's facts. That's facts.
But I'm talking about
and just I was gonna say, just touching on Taj Brooks before we move on. I definitely think he'll probably end the year as RB2. I know he won't start that just because they're gonna make him earn his stripes, no pun. But I definitely see Zach Moss as RB4 or cut if I'm being honest. Maybe they bring in a UDFA running back to fill a practice squad spot or something like that. I'm all in favor of cutting Moss and signing Nick Chubb. I'd love to have him in our running back room. But I honestly believe Taj Brooks could will be RB2 and could end up becoming RB1, because I know nobody's really talking about this, but Chase Brown will be up. Well, he'll be a free agent in 2 seasons. He's only under contract for this season and next season. And when you've got as much money invested in our offense, the way that Chase Brown has been performing, and the way that he is trending, I don't know if you're going to be able to pay Chase Brown when it's time to pay Chase Brown. So, they could project Taj Brooks as that, RB2 to transition into that RB1 role, and, probably do this again in a couple years. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to transition right now. I know it's a Bengals podcast, but we're going to talk about some other draft classes throughout the league that we look at and might envy a little bit. Some of the best fits that we found. I do want to start real quick before you give your picks, Phil. I do want to talk about the division, the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the Browns, the Ravens, and the Steelers, it's probably surprising that I would say that the Browns had my favorite draft, not just in the division, but one of my favorite drafts in the
Mm-hmm.
entire league. I mean, they really bodied it, and we were looking at it in real
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, yo, the Browns are kind of doing their thing. Obviously, they traded that second pick to Jacksonville and got more draft capital. Jacksonville taking a swing on Travis Hunter, which I think, a lot of the reports coming out where you're getting 2 first-round picks with 1 pick, with the corner and receiver. We know that he's going to be playing receiver starting out and have a package for defense. We'll see how that goes. A lot of question marks there. Whatever, that's not our concern at this point. But I will say the Browns draft was very, very impressive. I gave them, I believe, an A minus, somewhere around there. You got Mason Graham, which terrifies me, Phil. They got him at the 5th pick. Carson Schwessinger, I think I'm saying his name right, in the round 2. They had two second-round picks, Schwessinger and Judkins. We know how
Yep.
we feel about Judkins. Judkins is
Man.
actually a perfect fit for Cleveland.
Perfect.
Fannin with their first third-round pick, and then Dylan Gabriel with their second third-round pick. You follow that up with another running back, Dylan Sampson, which is you got 2 stud running backs, like 2
Mm-hmm.
stud running backs in this draft, which is like,
Yes.
man, what in the world? How did this happen? And then, of course, they rounded out with their last pick in the 5th round with Shador Sanders, who not easily, but he could be QB1
Mm-hmm.
at some point. So I just think that draft they knocked it out the park. I'm going to give the Ravens credit after that. I think they
Mm-hmm.
probably are in the B+ range, B range, as far as what they did. I mentioned, shout out to Corey, because we were sitting there and all of a sudden he just looked up like Malachi Starks when the Ravens run the clock. They're going to take Malachi Starks. And sure enough, good teams do good things. They took him. They had what? Man, they had a lot of picks. They had 11 picks,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. Now 5 of them or 6 of them were 6th-round picks, and then you have the 7th on top of that. But Malachi starts with their first. Mike Green, who had some character issues. I think he was accused of. I don't even know the full story, but I know it was bad. I think he got a weird case. A lot of
Why
people
is he
looked at him.
around?
Yeah, a lot of people looked at him as one of the first edges being taken. He fell to the 2nd round, pick 59. Then you got Emory Jones at offensive tackle, along with a lot of other people, other picks. They used a 6th-round pick on Tyler Loop. And of course, they just cut Justin Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
So I like them. And then the Steelers, right? The Steelers didn't do anything that was crazy or sexy. I do like, I think the perfect fit for them is Caleb, Cincinnati kid, not Cincinnati kid, Hamilton kid. Let me make sure I said that correctly. Why can't I think of my man's name? Caleb Johnson, right?
Yep. From
Caleb
Iowa.
Johnson with that 2nd pick. They took Derek Harmon with the 1st round. Cool, whatever. He would have been there for us as well. We obviously chose to go with Stewart. I think Stewart was probably higher on our board than him. Jack Sawyer in the 4th round, I think, was a great pickup for them. He feels like a Steeler. You know what I mean? He really feels like a Steeler. And then we've talked about this, Phil. It sounds crazy. Sometimes the right player with the right team just goes a long way. Will Howard with the Steelers, I really like that. I really like Will Howard with the Steelers
I love
because
it.
there's not going to be a ton of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
He can go in, do his job. I think Ohio State really prepared him to be an NFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody you weren't thinking about before the draft. Because I told you, I like Howard and I like McCord.
Yep.
I think in the right system, McCord can do well. I would love to see McCord maybe go to the Rams and be
Yeah.
under McVay. I just think
Yeah.
he just needs a good quarterback coach, somebody who's good with the offense, or even Minnesota. It's hard to do that with JJ being so young and them drafting him
Yeah.
last year. But
Yeah.
if they, let's say they still had Darnold there and that was it, they didn't draft a quarterback last year. I think McCord could have been a big good fit for them. Will they be good quarterbacks? Who knows? We don't know yet. But for some reason, I love Will Howard with the Steelers, and I think he's going to be very productive.
Mm-hmm.
Does he scare me? As Mike Lombardi always says, are you thinking about him while you're driving to the stadium? Probably not. But you can also look at the end of the game and it's like, dang, man, Will Howard cooked us.
Yep.
So it is what it is, man. I really liked in that order the Browns, the Ravens, and then the Steelers, whatever. I give the Steelers like a B minus, C plus. They're not too much higher than what I had us ranked. But as far as the division goes, I wanted to make sure we talked about that because we got to win the division in order to reach our goals. Who
Yep.
were some non-division draft classes that you really enjoyed, Phil?
Yeah, great question there. The number one class that I'm most envious of, because it was so strong on the defensive side of the ball, which where I feel like we need it, is a team that I really despise, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Man, I really think
Mm-hmm.
they crushed it in the draft. You know, grabbing Maxwell Hairston at the back end of the first round, had the fastest 40 time the corner from UK. Then they turned around and grabbed T.J. Sanders in the top end of the second round on that South Carolina defense that we talked about earlier that Demetrius Knight was on. Very, very solid defensive tackle that I think was probably on the Bengals' radar. Then they grabbed Landon Jackson, who was another combine freak, you know, kind of in that Shamar Stewart range as far as his performance from the edge position. Really great pick there. And then in round 4, crazy value. They got Deion Walker, the big 6'8" defensive tackle from UK. That you know, we saw what Philly did in the trenches, and three of their first 4 picks were on that defensive line. 5th round, they got Jordan Hancock, corner out of Ohio State, the Ohio State. Great value there in the 5th round. Um, Jackson Hall's the tight end from Georgia Tech. I didn't really care about too much. I think getting Dorian Strong, the corner from Virginia Tech, in the 6th round was great value. Chase Lunt, the offensive tackle, is in their 6th round, who's probably going to project the guard. I like him as a project. And Caden Prather, the receiver from Maryland. You know, Buffalo's really good with those kind of like overlooked, undervalued type receivers, and I think he is another great fit for them to kind of fill out that receiver room. They signed Elijah Moore in the offseason, who you know is a favorite of mine. So they definitely believe in their receiver room with them only drafting in that 7th round there. So that was a class that I was really jealous of. I think they really knocked it out of the park, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah,
And
the
the
first
team
5 picks were all defense.
Yeah. And the team with the front office that just seems to outsmart everyone in every which way every year. The Philadelphia Eagles, man, just an amazing draft class, in my opinion. Being able to just sit there at 31 and land Jahad Campbell was crazy. I know they moved up one spot with Kansas City, but being able to get Jahad Campbell at 31, the back end of the first round, you get that 5th-year option on a player like that. That's crazy. Andrew Makuba going in the 2nd round was a little rich for me, but it does address a need at safety for them. Ty Robinson in the 4th round, great pick. Defensive tackle from Nebraska. They know how to tool the trenches. If there's anybody I trust drafting a defensive lineman, it's definitely Philly. They took Mac McWilliams in the 5th round, who early in my draft preparation is a guy I sent to you that I thought might be on the Bengals' radar as a Mike Hilton replacement. They got another linebacker from Georgia. They love Georgia, especially on the defensive side. Smell Mondon Jr. Drew Kendall, the center out of Boston College. They always find good centers, so I don't know much about him, but I'm sure he's a solid player. You talked about Kyle McCord earlier in this segment. He went there in Philly, so I think that's a good place to be as far as development is concerned. He obviously won't get to see the field, but I think he will have the opportunity to develop and learn there. So their very last pick, that 6th-round pick, their 4th 6th-round pick, Antoine Powell-Ryland, edge out of Virginia Tech, definitely a project player, but a player that I think we look back on this draft and you'd be like, how did they get this dude in the 6th round? Like, I think he could be a double-digit sack guy in the league. And, saying that about a 6th rounder, I know it's crazy, but I do think he has that type of upside, even though, he may be viewed as a lottery ticket with him going in that late in the draft. But yeah, I think he's going to be a freak. So I'm gonna keep an eye on him, see how he pans out being that late in the draft. So.
For sure.
But that's what I had there.
I'll tell you one team that I really like their draft. You heard him on the last episode. Shout out to our brother Corey. I think the Giants had a really good draft, which is kind of insane when you the Giants single-handedly might be the reason we never get another GM Hard Knocks. Because no one ever wants to look that dumb ever again.
Right.
On HBO. But I will say, despite their own incompetencies, they had a really good draft. Abdul Carter, arguably the best player in the draft. Got him at number 3. Keep Thibodeau. Got Sexy Dexy in the middle. We were at the game last year.
Yeah.
At MetLife. And we just saw how tough that defense was. That defense was phenomenal, right? And I expect them to do the same this year. And adding Carter is only going to make them stronger. And they need it in their division. They've got their own worries, but I'm glad they're not on our schedule again.
Yeah,
I'll say that much.
we struggle stopping Ojolari, so you had
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of rough, right?
Yeah.
You have a second. You also. I think they traded back into to get that second 1st round pick at 25 and get Jackson Dart. A lot of people were thinking that was going to be a Shador pick. Listen, I like Jackson Dart. I think he can make all the throws. I know we're torn on this. I like Jackson. I think he's going to be really, really good. I honestly do. It's not going to surprise me. And I think I said this in Vegas. It's not going to surprise me if we look back and be like, oh, okay, like, I get it now. I understand it now. Shout out to Lethal Shooter. But I think Jackson Dart's going to be really good. And I think because he was at SC first and then went to Ole Miss.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah. I just think he's going to be somebody that's good. Somebody who's going to be making an impact. It could potentially have a better career. Well, I won't say, let me chill. They're not my team. Let me chill. But really, what really wins the drafts, not just nailing your 1st round pick, but finding those gems. Those later rounds, we both loved this in real time when we were watching. Shout out to UT. Shout out to the Rockets. Darius Alexander in the 3rd round, their defensive tackle. I just mentioned about that front line. He is going to be a stud for them. And learning behind Dexter Lawrence is going to be insane for his development. And then 4th round pick, Cam Scatterbo, who I think is going to be a good back. Anytime you got add an offensive weapon, go ahead and take him, especially in the 4th round. Sure. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you said they might have reached a little bit. I'm confusing fantasy and real life.
Yeah.
I know we had a fantasy draft recently, and Cam went the last pick in the 1st round, and you weren't expecting that. But what about his 4th round placement? Were you good with that?
I absolutely love that pick, especially for the Giants. I mean, I think he could end up being the starter if he can work on this ball security. And don't throw nothing at me, people. You listeners, anyone. I don't think Scatterbo is that different than Genty, minus the ball security issues. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think they're that different.
No, it doesn't, because I don't want to say this We all know Genty's good. For some reason, I don't see him as the same way other people do see him.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't see him that way either. I just don't. He hasn't done anything yet for me to get this excited about him.
Yeah.
It's not like when Jamar was coming out, and I'm like, oh yeah, we want him. Like he's going to be a dog. We knew that. And I think Genty's going to be a dog. He's going to be really good. I just drafted him 1 overall.
Yeah.
I just don't see there's no real running back that made me like, all right, let's see what happens. Could he come in and dominate? Sure. I'm not expecting him to be Adrian Peterson out the gate or just having some crazy. If y'all remember 07, Adrian Peterson rookie season, he could have been in the MVP running. Like he was that good. So I don't see it being that, but I don't know if I'm seeing Cam Scatterball at the same thing. But you could be right. That's the thing with running backs, man. It could be. It's all about situation. We talk about the most famous of all time. Or famous debate of all time. You swap out Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith.
Man, oh man.
Sometimes your situation matters. So that's not taking anything away from Emmitt Smith, right?
I'm taking everything away from it. So nah.
That's fair. Shout out to D Hall. But yeah, we'll see what happens, man. But I really like that pick. I talked about the Browns. That was one of my favorite drafts. And also, I don't necessarily love it, but there are 2 teams who I think build a really good foundation, especially with new coaches, new work coaches. And that's the Titans and the Patriots.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of discrepancy out there about the Patriots and getting Travion and the fit for him. I think Travion's going to be, especially when you have Vrabel who played with somebody like James White. I believe they were teammates. I'm sure Vrabel was still playing when James White was there. I could be wrong.
I'm almost positive.
Even if not James White, I know he played with Kevin Falk, like that kind of player. And I think Travion's better than both of them, all due respect. Will Campbell, I think, is going to be a stud. He is more of a high upside person. Like, I don't think he might not be the best tackle coming out of this class this year, but 3, 4, 5 years, I could definitely see that. Kyle Williams out of Washington State. They just had a lot of picks, and I think they set a good foundation for it. Also, I mentioned the Titans. I really like what they did. Obviously, number 1 overall, they went with Cam, who I think is going to be fine there. His work ethic alone lets me know everything I need to know about him. Oladejo in the 2nd round, Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State in the 3rd round. But then the weapons they gave Cam, I think, is really what solidified this for me. You have Shamir Dyke out of Florida in the 4th round. You have Gunnar Helm out of Texas, who I love. Tight end out of in the 4th round. You also have another wide receiver in the 4th round. Ayo Manor, if I'm saying this right, out of Stanford.
Oh, Ely, yeah.
Yes, who single-handedly went to sleep one day, woke up broke because I had him in I had Colorado. If anybody remembers that famous Colorado game when they were up big, I think that was, I don't know, I might be tripping. Maybe I'm not thinking about the right game. Either way, I do know they played Colorado. He was dog walking them, and that includes the number 2 overall pick, Travis Hunter. Like dogging them.
Yeah.
So they use all of their 4th round picks on offensive weapons for Cam. Not to mention Khalil Mullings out of Michigan with their last pick, and they went ahead and got Cam's favorite target in Miami as an unrestricted free agent or undrafted free agent. Yeah. So I'm not saying they're going to be like world beaters coming out the gate, but I do think that's a great foundation. 3 years from now, we could be seeing Tennessee back in contention for winning that division. I'm trying to think who else is in that division. Yeah, I can see them winning that division, and really putting some things together. We'll see how the coaching goes for them, but real big fan of that. And hopefully the Bengals have the best draft class when we look back at this in a couple of years. But we'll see. Lastly, before we get out of here, Phil, we got to talk a little bit of fantasy. We had a dynasty draft this past weekend. A lot of fun always. Shout out to Illuminati League. I had the first 2 picks overall. Mind you, this is dynasty, not redraft. I took Genty and Hampton. Didn't pick again to the 3rd round. You had 2 first-round picks? You traded some. We both had more, but we traded some. Who'd you take with your first-rounders?
My first-round picks were Colston Loveland. Was at 111 or 111. That was my second first round pick. My first round pick was T Mac, Tedero McMillan,
That's right. It was the fourth pick
receiver for
overall. That's right.
Carolina. Yeah, fourth pick overall. So I got Tet, and I was expecting a running back to be available for me at 111. And the only one that was there was Scatterbo, and I also had 2-2 and was planning on taking Scatterbo 2-2, but he ended up going 112. So that's why I ended up taking Loveland at 111, because I didn't expect him to be there, and the running back of my choice, RJ Harvey, went the pick right before. So that
And of
kind of
course, in true Phil fashion, favorable Phil, he picks Matthew Golden at 202. Somebody has Jordan Love at quarterback, traded their 2027 first round pick to
yes,
Phil for
sir.
Matthew Golden because he does not need another receiver. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, Phil is stacking up on the Jeremiah Smith fantasy sweepstakes.
Yes,
I think
sir.
you now have 4 2027 first round
Yes,
picks, excuse me.
yes, indeed.
Yeah,
I need as many chances I can get.
that's lame. I got 2, and I'm trying to get as many more. I had an opportunity. Let me know. I'm interested, man. Let me know about this move, y'all. I had an opportunity to get Derrick Henry and 2 2027 first round picks in exchange for 101. So pretty much in
Man,
exchange for Genty. Um, when I tell y'all it was difficult to say no to that, it was, but I'm also in win now mode. After the projections came out, I'm now the favorite to win the league. Obviously, that means zero, absolutely nothing. But I have been doing a good job of building my team over the past few seasons, and I'm happy with where we are. I had the fourth pick, so I had 1-1, 1-2, and 1-4 originally. I traded 1-4 in Tucker Craft for Trey McBride. So I drafted Trey McBride with the fourth pick on top of getting Genty and Hampton. We'll see what happens. But not to talk about our teams, just want to hear your thoughts on your fantasy fits. Who
yeah.
got drafted this year that you think is going to be really good and productive for fantasy, and that you love their placements?
Yeah, so I just got 4 guys that I really love the fantasy fit for. One is one that you actually touched on earlier when we were talking about the regular draft, and that's Judkins, running back out of the Ohio State University that went to Cleveland. I think he's gonna get all of those Chubbs touches. I think he's RB1 from day one. Second is who I was hoping to get at 111, and that's RJ Harvey. I think he is the clear cut RB1 in Denver. And I haven't seen Sean Payton get that excited about a player in a while. So it really excited to see how he pans out there, even though I was unable to grab him. Also, really like the Pat Bryant pick that Denver made in the 3rd round there. I think that's going to be the Cortland Sutton replacement. I think he's a true X receiver. Kind of reminds me of when the Bengals got T. Higgins at the top of the 2nd round. I think them getting Pat Bryant in that 3rd round is really like getting a 2nd round receiver who could potentially be wide receiver 1 for you in the future. My favorite wide receiver fantasy landing spot was Kyle Williams, who I did land in the fantasy draft in our dynasty league. I think he's going to be wide receiver 1 for New England. Shout out to Corey. Corey is the one who originally put me on the Kyle Williams. He knows how much I love receivers, and he really does, kind of remind me of Justin Jefferson's. I don't want to say that lightly, but I definitely think he can have that type of impact for New England, and I'm really excited to see how he pans out.
Hey man, you can always expect Phil to come on this podcast and say some wild wide receiver
Oh yeah,
take.
absolutely. It's my favorite
Whether
position.
it be Jamar being the GOAT,
He is.
which
I'm standing
he's
on
on
it.
his way. He's on his
Yeah.
way. You could be right about this. I'm just saying, man. You just never fail, man. You crack me
Yeah.
up.
And then Colston Loveland, he really reminds Ben Johnson a lot of Sam Laporta, and we've seen what Sam Laporta has done in Detroit. And even though they do have Cole Kmet there, I do expect to see Chicago play a lot of 12 and Kmet be assigned to a lot of blocking while Colston Loveland is making plays. So those were my favorite fantasy fits. You could also, while I'm talking about Chicago, throw Kyle Monangai into that situation as well, the running back from Rutgers who they got in the 7th round. I definitely think he's going to get a lot of touches, splitting carries with DeAndre Swift. I think we'll see kind of that Gibbs and Montgomery type of share as far as the carries are concerned. So that's another one I'm excited to see, how he plays out. Kind of that Barry Sanders mode, like 5'8", 208. So I want to see that.
I like that list. A lot of the people you mentioned, Colson Loveland, I think is going to be a great fit in Chicago with Ben Johnson. I can see him being a fantasy monster. I think actually the last 2 seasons, rookie tight ends have led that position in fantasy with Bowers and I think McBride the year before him.
Yep.
Would not shock me if Loveland's the same this year. I mean, Brock is going to be difficult to knock off that pedestal because he's just so good. But his new teammate, I like him a lot. Not Genty, but Jack Beck. I like Jack Beck in Vegas. I think he's going to be – he can be one of those players that wins you a league just because he consistently puts up numbers. We'll see how it goes with Geno and how a training camp works and how they actually end up faring off. Obviously, you mentioned R.J. Harvey. We know Sean Payton likes to use running back committees, but I think R.J. Harvey is indeed the best running back that they have on their roster. I think he's going to make a lot of noise. I like Matthew Golden.
Yeah.
With Jordan Love, I really like them. All the talks have been, hey, they need a wide receiver 1. We'll see if he turns into that. He's obviously a burner. The NFL game is different. Someone who I really would have loved a lot more if it wasn't for the landing spot, and I still like them, like especially in real football terms. I just don't think they're going to throw enough, and they have enough targets already. It's Trey Harris. I'm a big fan of Trey Harris. I just don't know if going to the Chargers is his best fantasy outlook.
Right.
When you have Ladd there and when you have Hampton and Najee Harris with them running the ball as much as they do. And then also the last person I will go ahead and throw on this list. Got to give my brother D Hall some love, man. Especially after the Pickens trade. I got to give Jaden Blue some love. I think Jaden Blue is going to be one of those running backs that you can look up. Could we do it every year? I think about 2 years ago in our rookie draft, our first rookie draft in this league, 5th round, 4th round pick, Puka. I think Jaden Blue can be one of those things you look back in a couple years like, oh, how did he go so late? Everybody had an opportunity. A-Chain, like all types of people that you look and say, yo, how did everybody miss on them? I think that he could really be good in Dallas. And I think that he's going to have open lanes, especially when people trying to cover CD and cover Pickens when he's on the field and not suspended and all that kind of good stuff. So I just say that as a little shot. I'm sure he'll take care of himself, but we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be fun, man. Football is there are no games to be played for the next 4 months. It's still a fun time of the year to go ahead and talk football. So Phil, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Don't sleep on Tyler Shuck, baby. That was my QB3 in this year's draft class. He is going to be starting day 1 as far as the rookie quarterbacks are concerned. Only him and Cam Ward are probably going to be starting from this class day 1. Jackson Dart is Gardner Minshew at best. And I think Shador is going to have to wait a little bit, unfortunately. But Tyler Shuck, don't sleep on him. He's 25 like Demetrius Knight, but he's ready to go. He's locked in. He's experienced. And I think that was probably the best option for the Saints having a rookie head coach. I'm blanking on his name right now, but Kellen Moore, having a rookie head coach, having a quarterback like that, I think it was probably the right decision. And he's definitely gonna get an opportunity because Derek Carr is out of commission, so might get cut.
I'll give you credit. You've been on him for a while. You said that for quite some time. Way back in the early draft process, how much you loved him.
Yes, sir.
I hate his injury history.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. So we appreciate y'all for tuning in, man. A lot of fun. Like I said, we'll be right back next week to go over the schedule that is releasing on the 14th. So we should probably record that night. I believe that's a Wednesday.
Yep, that's a Wednesday.
Yeah, as long feeling myself from time to time, we can be washed. As long as one of us doesn't fall asleep on the couch, we'll record that evening, and get that out to you, and then like I said, we'll break down a little bit more about what our schedule is going to be for the summer, and as we gear up for training camp, waiting on that training camp date to start. We know it's going to be late to July when the Bengals start. We just don't have an official date. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe, comment, like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Send this to any Bengals fan you know and any football fan you know. I think they can find some enjoyment out of this, especially if they're a division rival. Maybe they want the inside scoop on what their division mates are up to. But with that being said, we'll catch y'all next week. And always remember, who they?
Yes, sir. Who they? Rookie minicamp. Let's go.
Let's get it.